Before the video starts, I want to give thanks to all who watched and responded to my last video, and to those watching this video. Your existence has meaning. Then holy crap does the footage recorded for this video take up a lot of space. With that said, enjoy. Tales of the Abyss is one of the greatest RPGs ever made, one with a story tackling themes of identity, fate, trauma, and the impact of religion on humanity. Featuring a rough but well-acted cast of characters and all tied together with a rock-solid real-time combat system. Of course, only that last part really matters for this video since I will be showcasing a run of Tales of the Abyss in which I only use spells. The rules should be self-explanatory. All damage I deal must be done through spells known in game as phonic arts. If I accidentally use an attack, non-spell art, or activate overlimit, I must load from my last save. The only exceptions are any mandatory encounters in which I cannot use anyone with a damaging spell. I will be doing this run unmodded on the North American PS2 version on normal. No shade if you want to try this on 3DS though, that's how I played this game before the run. The run doesn't really start until we get a magic user. Thankfully it doesn't take long, as after being introduced to Luke and doing a tutorial where we're forced into using arts anyways, an assassin appears to try and off Luke's mentor Van. She fails, accidentally warping alongside Luke to Tataru Valley. Said assassin, Tyr, will be the first character we can really use as more than bait, and the run can truly begin. Before moving further, go into the strategy menu to make sure the AI doesn't do anything. Tyr Grants, despite introductions, is a mage. Her spell list includes healing options, a basic dark spell, various light magic, and some miscellaneous spells to set field of phonons. Said basic dark spell is Nightmare. Unfortunately, it's slow as shit to charge because it's a phonic hymn, and her non-hymn damage option isn't until the level 30s. Also, for interactions with Eugene and Radiant Mythology, our indicator Tyr's a furry. Just want to put that out there. Oh Lorelei, that rebirth translation can't come soon enough. In Tales series tradition, the first real fight is against a pig. Not a terrifying fight given it's just a single pig and I'm on normal. In 2 casts of Nightmare, the fight is over and I have some relief knowing the AI can't screw this run over. If you can drag someone else into this run, I'd recommend it. I avoid most encounters in Tataru since Tyr will be drained of MP after a fight otherwise. Thankfully, this game uses simple encounters, flaying is guaranteed in the Tales series, and dungeons in this game are short so we're able to leave the area and move on to endgame with little issue. In addition, I won't have to go too in depth on dungeons. Comedy of errors ensues with an endgame. Luke and Tyr meet 2 characters who may or may not be mages we can use later on, and we can now buy items and rest. Thankfully, among side items you can buy our orange gels, which restore MP by 30%. This is normal for the Tales series, by the way, for those coming from games more stringent on their MP economy. After endgame, I scout out Chigal Woods. Unfortunately, I have to grind in the world map if I want any chance to defeat the enemies here, much less the boss. I make sure to loot the place and unlock capacity cores before starting the grind. Capacity cores are a form of equipment that grants stat bonuses upon level up, with passive skills unlocking based on how many stat bonuses that character has accumulated. Generally speaking, you want 60 points in every stat but physical attack if you want all the good skills for mages. Enemies drop basically nothing since I can't build combo, so level grinding will take a while. As for money, you can sell items from search points that refresh every time you enter the world map. The benchmark you want to reach is to have a full supply of orange gel and Tyr at level 6. Also Mew joins. He's responsible for the Schwarzfeld appearing in Aldrint. While a long fight, the Liger Queen is simple in the sense that Tyr has free reign to pelt the Queen with Nightmare as long as Luke stays close to the Queen. Luke can easily avoid most attacks by simply free running, an action unlocked at level 5 for everyone. Free run is an action introduced in the series by Abyss that lets you move freely from your target. In general, free run is good to the point of being an active criticism of the combat. Mind you, it's not like you can attack and move at the same time, but I kinda get the sentiment. Once the Queen takes around 5,000 damage, an overleveled Jade Curtis comes in to finish the job. Enjoy it while it lasts, maybe use him to help level Luke and Tyr if you desire. I leave Chigal Woods, the party gets arrested, Luke almost causes an international incident aboard the TARDIS like he normally does. We learn the catheters are having an internal conflict over which pope to listen to. Jade gets hit with a magic pore sealant meant for the small pope, then joins for real as we escape the TARDIS and the consequences of our actions. Jade Curtis is the second magic user I'll have access to. Jade is a simple yet effective mage. He has a wide variety of elemental magic at his command, a solid MP drain option, and he's going to be faster at casting than Tyr for a long while. To start, he just has Energy Blast, a cheap, quick burst of damage with no element. What else can I— oh, look at his Pac-Man belt buckle. Oh, and would you look at that Wrath of Tartarus. There were like 2 mandatory encounters, however the first exists just to teach Luke what it's like to end another's life, so it doesn't count. I forget just how sharp this game's writing can be though. The other is a standard encounter and introduces Guy Cecil who has no spells. Shortly after, we find out Guy is the average gay furry VN fan.
What?
Guy doesn't like women.
I'd say it looks more like a phobia.
Can't say I relate. I start violently convulsing at anything stronger than Winds of Change. After more scenes of tonal ping pong, we stop by St. Bina for plot and supplies. I recommend doing side quests in this run, at least for 2 specific accessories and increased purchasing power. Thankfully most just amount to talking to an NPC, maybe giving them an easily obtained item or few. There are some side quests that are as long as hard as me, where I to meet Dial from Tales of Berseria, but beating those just gives you a costume. The next area, Fubris River, is a transitory area where Jade is convinced to do the wrong thing and Tyr learns a useless phonic hymn. Following, we get our third mage in Kaitsura, Anis Tatlin, who may have the mannerisms of the average Twitter and her MP pool is about as shallow, but she can be a damn potent mage. Limited can alter itself, Negative Gate hits hard and a lot, and Bloody Howling does both. She just has Limit for now though. The next dungeon is Coral Castle. When going to resupply, it may be worth it to cross the Fubris, as St. Bina's items are cheaper than Kaitsura's items. The mandatory encounters here are draining, so it's a good idea to stock up on orange gels. At the end of the dungeon is the next major boss, Arietta. Arietta is rather infamous for some players, being the first boss to have enough defense to no-sell attacks from the player on unknown mode unless they grind an absurd amount, or take the disc out of the PS2 to get a late game weapon early. Thankfully it's not so bad on normal. I still end up losing a couple attempts, but at least MP isn't an issue for now. The strategy is to take out Arietta first since she attacks solely with magic, then Restvelgar, then the Liger. It helps to get Jade to level 8 to learn Stalagmite. The optional Sword Dancer fight unlocks afterwards, however save that for the next time the plot takes you near Kaitsura, as Sword Dancer has that nasty mix of AoE attack speed and damage that makes it hard to cheese with free run. Also save before leaving Kaitsura Port on the boat in case you want to grind for the next boss. The next major stop is Kesidonia, not for combat but because the side quests for Tyr and Anis' special accessories start here. Oh, and plot of course. Tears is just talking to some guy while Anis has you giving items to the Antlion Man every time the plot takes you to Kesidonia. Afterwards is a fight with Disc's robot on the boat Sabbatical. He's not hard, but you do need a supply of orange gel and a little prudence on your casting as there's no heal spot on the boat. In Battlefield, the king makes the genius decision of sending Nuke to Exeriuth, and Natalia plans to join us on our way out. Natalia Luzu Kimlaska Landvildir is a simple yet effective healer. Her whole spell list is just heals and buffs. Her heals are also percentage based, so she's not super dependent on gear this run. Because of her not needing cast every waking moment, I will be controlling her from now on. And would you look at that, we've reached the end of the factory. Abaddon isn't a noteworthy boss. Stay supplied and you shouldn't need to grind. Upon leaving, we find the small Pope has been captured by someone with the same voice as Luke.
Hand over Ion now!
And we have to go to Zhao Ruins to save him. Short dungeon and the items in Kesidonia should be cheap. If you feel like breaking gear progression a little, you can grind out the nearby search point to get the late game spear Penetrator for Jade from Din's shop. You do need charcoal from search point 2, about 70 scorpion stingers, and the rare Navi metal from search point 6 to drop however. I forgot to keep the charcoal, so I'm unable to get such a spear myself. At the end of Zhao Ruins is Largo and Sink. A bit of an exaggeration, but it might be appropriate to say this is the Ornstein and Smo of this game. Nah, I'm kidding. You want the Dark Souls of Tales? Go play Tales of Eternia. Seriously though, for the casual player you'll want to grind a bit to survive this duo's frequent attacks. In my case, I've been severely underleveled, so I kind of have to. In theory, I could just get good, but in practice I have no clue how to do that as I have 2 enemies to bait and the ever-present issue that get good isn't going to restore MP. My winning attempt happened at around the levels of 18 to 20 for the party, with Natalia and Anis unable to get the experience. The main strategy is to defeat Sync first since he's got spells, then go for Largo. This is no easy task given you can't easily strafe around Largo. After that mess, the party heads back to Cassidonia. After Luke gets a headache, make sure to check on the Antlion Man, then you can take the boat back to Kaitsua. Before heading to the next dungeon, make sure to fight the Sword Dancer at Coral Castle. With more levels and better gear, the fight should be much more doable. Beating the Sword Dancer gets you some nice experience and an opportunity for more nice experience and equipment later down the road. The next dungeon is Dio Pass. It's Phoebus River with a boss. Jade should have drained magic by this point, so running out of MP should be of little issue for the next boss, Lagretta. Her design is cool and all, but she's a breather boss after Largo and Sync. I just want to say before covering Exterior that this video will contain major spoilers for Tales of the Abyss. While I think the game's writing holds to repeat viewings of foreknowledge of events or plot points, I hold enough respect for this game to not casually spoil it. The party reaches Exterior. It's not looking good. People are dying and the poison gas is visible. Tyr leaves for the area to confirm something, however there are no mandatory encounters. At the end of the tunnels, tragedy strikes. Luke, with Van's encouragement, accidentally destroys the Sephiroth holding Exterior's landmass, ending the lives of thousands. So as it turns out, Luke is a clone of Ash. Luke's beloved master Van is a bad guy. Aldrint is essentially a hollow earth where the land we knew is held up by the Sephiroth trees, and most of the underground is a sea of mud and miasma known as the Qliphoth. Yeah, that thing Persona 5 based Mementos off of. After a controversial scene with some of the best voice acting in the game,
Don't compare me to you! Don't compare me to...
we arrive at the one settlement in the Qliphoth, Yulia City. Upon arrival, Ash forces Luke into a duel. Thankfully, you don't have to win this one. As a result, Luke will be spending some time inside Ash's head. The party will process this new information with Mew and Tyr staying behind. We'll have Ash for this segment. He's basically Luke with some spell access. Unfortunately, Ash has as much phonic attack as I have games I like, so he's good as useless. The seas open up a bit as Ash and party leave Yulia City, with the next major stop being Belkin for its phone tech research lab Van frequents. Make sure to pick up the Valkyrie doll for Annis in the medical room as it will provide a nice attack buff. The plot will then direct you to Orshin Cave with Guy going back to Luke after meeting the current Valkyrie research important guy. Short dungeon, we learn more about how cloning works in this setting, then fight a rather simple boss. You think not having Tyr or a healing spot in the dungeon would be an issue, especially with a boss that summons, but it turns out to be easy. Ash contributes jack shit, leaves, and we learn Saint Bina is going to fall. Going back to Luke, during a conversation with Tyr about what he experienced through Ash, he cuts his hair to signify he wants to change, has to change. Even if you and Luke argue that Van is to blame for the thousands dead, Luke has still been giving everyone around him a good reason to drop his ass in the story leading up to Exterior with his increasing arrogance. Following that, Luke and Tyr go to Aramis Spring. It's a transitory area, but I really like some of the dialogue here.
Do you remember? It was after the kidnapping, so I guess it was right after you were born.
What? Did something happen?
I asked you if it was hard not having your memory. You said, you can't go forward if you keep looking back. So you didn't need a past. That's what you told me.
Man, I was stupid. I did not need one. I didn't have one.
Actually, I thought it was pretty insightful.
At the end of the spring, we're directed by Jay to go to Doth as Natalia and Small Pope are imprisoned there. I should probably explain the primary religious faction in this game given we're heading to basically the Vatican. The Order of Lorelei is a religion that likes, comments, and subscribes to the Score, an expensive script of the future written by the aggregate sentience Lorelei onto massive stones scattered across and or around the planet. Between the minutiae it goes into and its supposed telling of eventual prosperity, basically everyone in Aldrint follows it, to the point the Order of Lorelei is not only a neutral diplomatic entity, but a powerful military entity as well. At Doth Cathedral, we meet Annis' parents who fell for the charity scam, and there's a brief dungeon. Natalia and Ion get freed and we get directed to Rotello Bridge to try and save St. Bina's collapse. However, since I played the game before, I go to Ketterberg. In Ketterberg, we get Jade's backstory. He was an autistic kid who got into cloning magic, accidentally set his teacher's house on fire, failed to revive her with cloning magic, and deals with that guilt. Ketterberg also has a casino, so you can imagine what I'll be doing for an hour off screen. Yes, I will be using save states for the casino. That's what save states are for. You can't immediately break the economy though, as none of the items you can trade in have much resale value. The casino doesn't become the main money method later either, but it's still worth doing for now. I at least stock up on some greatswords and silver cloaks to sell later in the meantime. The next destination is Tear Forest. The second sword dancer fight is nearby and is worth doing. I end up winning my first attempt. Anis is really starting to shine with negative gate, and honestly Jade's drain magic isn't half bad at this stage given I can set up its FOF alteration for party-wide MP regeneration with ease. Winning gives you a solid amount of experience and a decent weapon for Tyr or Anis at this stage of the game. In Tear Forest is a stealth section where stealth is optional. Not so much in this run due to MP concerns, especially since Jade's busy during this dungeon, but you're free to just knock out the guards. If need be, you can loot the place later. Weird the devs let you skip the stealth section but couldn't implement some quality of life found in older titles like auto cooking or save anywhere from Eternia. Okay, that's enough nitpicking in Eternia, glazing back to peak. Grand Kokma is a nice city in which we meet Jade's homoplatonic soulmate, Emperor Peony, get permission to evacuate St. Bina, and learn Guy's backstory. He's a former noble whose family was slain by Duke Faber in the Hod War, no longer seeking revenge due to befriending Luke. Wonder if this will end up relating to his genophobia later. Also, this is the last major city in Abyss, so expect to hear repeat locations a lot. I recommend not taking the fast path to St. Bina to loot Tear Forest and restock save and endgame, because this may be the last time we can go to St. Bina in full. At St. Bina, buy 5 maces for a quest and as many miracle gels as you can, and it's boss time. Likely due to me fighting Sword Dancer 2 earlier, but I found this round of Dist Kaiser to be trivial. With St. Bina now starting to fall, we are directed to Sheridan to pick up a way to fly. Tyr even assures us there's no time pressure by citing when Hod fell, taking several days. So some off-screen box pushing later and I'm at Sheridan. Plot conveniently, the way to fly is being tested, but we have to rescue the test pilot in the Megiora Highlands. Your party will be split. Make sure Luke's party at least has Jade and or Anis, as they will be fighting a boss. There's also a time limit, but it's extremely generous. I ended up only bringing Jade and through spamming Flame Burst beat the boss with half the time limit to spare. With the Albion lock, St. Bina is now in the cliff off and the party heads to Yulia City to discuss how to keep St. Bina from completely sinking. This directs us to the Shuri Hill Sephiroth. Nothing lengthy or difficult, but at least they're more creative than block puzzles, Symphonia. This is also that point where I can really feel the mages can handle repeat encounters. I'd still prefer to avoid encounters, but I'm not completely screwed if I do them. At the end of Shuri Hill, we realized the Sephiroth was holding up the entire Rudnikin continent, meaning Engave is the next to fall. So the party heads back to the Outer Lands only for war to break out, as this artistically distinct anime cutscene demonstrates. During the war, there's another party split where you both end up having to go to Chesedonia by land. Have Luke and Guy go with Jade, as you'll want to not get into any encounters as them. You don't want to get into any encounters with Natalia's group either, but there is one mandatory encounter with the Oracle Knights as their group. Wait, Cecile is a white-haired lady clad in red voiced by Tara Platt? Lady Edelgard, is that you? In Chesedonia, Natalia's attempt to stop the war gets hit with the "You're Adopted" card, and we're directed to the Zhao ruins to safely lower Rugnica. Make sure you do the stage of the Ant Lion Man quest, as it's the last missable one. Then start selling everything you don't need, as the war's making nearly everything expensive. Through war profiteering, I became a millionaire. Funny how otherwise the Tales game where you play as a bunch of bourgeois makes you feel the sting of having a prole's purchasing power, especially in this run. Make sure to buy the striped ribbon during the war, as it'll be cheap and you need it for the Ant Lion Man quest. War's impact on the economy ends after the next dungeon is cleared. The next dungeon is Zhao Ruins again. There's a boss where Largo and Sync were that I thought was going to be easy, but though as it turns out it's hard to bait. Afterwards is the Sephiroth, which turned out to be just some brief if visually nice corridors. The party manages to safely lower the Rugnican plains, leading to a ceasefire. I'm directed to go to Doth, however a bunch of opportunities open up. I finally make Jade a penetrator. I also buy Tyr's accessory for 100k in Grand Kokma, buffing her phonic attack and defense by 20%. I also do the ever tedious Cecile and Frink's quest off camera, and you'll get confirmation I did it because Guy gets stripped for it later down the road. Once I do my usual off-screen side questing, I head to Doth. In Doth, Small Pope reads us the score, learning Luke is a living blasphemy in the process. Big Pope, being aware of this, has the party arrested, with Luke and Natalia awaiting execution in Batical. Tyr and Ash, however, save us. Natalia gets confirmation that she's adopted, saving the audience from thinking about the incestuous implications of her with Ash. And the party flees with big damn moments about how the proles love Natalia for giving the slightest shit about them. Fleeing from Batical, we head to the swamp. Most noteworthy thing is that the area's boss is meant to be fled from, outside of a side quest where you can slay it for real. It's possible to beat now, but it gives no experience for doing so. It's a while before the next boss, but in summary of a lot of exposition and trips to Belkin, Sheridan, and Doth, the church stole the Albior's ability to fly, much like they stole Crystal Core's ability to form culture. In Belkin, Van reveals he seeks to rid the world of the score due to Hod being left to die by the rest of the world for religious reasons. Also in Belkin and Sheridan, we reunite college rivals to make a machine to save the world from toxic vibes started millennia ago. In Doth, we learn Guy's genophobia is a PTSD response from being buried under his sister's corpse when he was little, and we return to Tataru Valley to vibe check at Sephiroth. Okay, honestly, despite having to condense the plot for the vid's sake, I'm genuinely invested in the game at this point. Guarding the next Sephiroth is a Uniceros. It's a giant monster fight, kinda missing Largo and Sync already. At least Tyr learned a faster attack spell and declared alarms. Inside is more puzzle, and it's time to get the world to approve being lured into the Cliffoth, to officially stop the war, and to joint research into neutralizing the miasma so Aldrin can still be livable after. Afterwards, we head to Batical to reconcile Ingobert and Natalia with some rather touching moments. The first costume title of this run also unlocks around this point. It's a maid outfit for Tyr. It's not admissible. After a visit to Grand Kokma to get Peony on board, the next major stop is Doth to get back the Flight Stone. There's an extension of Oracle HQ, but no mandatory encounters. I like how Tyr just chooses violence in this situation. We love a female lead who gets shit done. Gaining the ability to fly again, I head for Cassidonia to get Aster on board with the treaty. While the guide places the next Ant Lion Man stage much further in the guide, you can do it now if you bought the striped ribbon during the war, or you can shell out over 279k gold for the ribbon now. Julius City up next to oversee the treaty signing. Guy puts King Ingobert at sword's length when he answers for Hod, with the world's leaders doing something entirely unrealistic, giving an answer and taking accountability for their actions. We also learn Van was used at a young age by Malkuth to destroy Hod for petty political reasons. With that said, the treaty is signed now. I recommend visiting Grand Kokma afterwards for two side events. A rather important event for this run where you encounter the Darkwings and they give you a key. Said key opens up an area tied to the Ant Lion Man quest later on. And a less important event where discussing a waterfall gives you more purchasing power in Grand Kokma. The former does have a bit of a cutoff point at a certain act-ending dungeon, but that's a bit of ways. Now that there's a semblance of peacetime, we head to Sheridan to unvibe the planet. Unfortunately, the old people who helped us get unvibed by Legretta and Vanna in return, but we must march on. At the planet's core is a fight against Sync. He's alone, but being a boss with magic still gives him some degree of threat as he can ignore my attempts to bait and hurt my mages. Beating Sync reveals that not only is he a clone of Small Pope, but the guy we know as Small Pope is also a clone of the Pope. And Luke himself is also a clone of God. Clone. There's an optional minigame following where you push a ball. Doing the minigame gets you a useless title for Tyr. Returning to Belkin, we find out Tyr has been poisoned by Sephiroth. I'm sure this flower girl will be fine though, right? The next major destination is the Megiora Highlands again for the Sephiroth. You can just beeline for the Sephiroth, or you can explore the area to do puzzles that disable the upcoming boss's arts. You can't disable them all, however. Legretta appears to scare us, and we learn that Van always knew what was on the 7th phone stone. Said next boss is a poor phone machine we beat up in order to power an elevator. They spam whatever magic they have available, easy unless your strategy is interrupted by constant phone-on circles of their element. Upon handling the Sephiroth, we handle the matter of Spinoza and go to the Doth Sephiroth while he deciphers some scientific paper Jade wrote on a diner napkin. At Doth, we encounter Big Pope mauling over half the military joining Van and tells us how to reach the next Sephiroth. Anis is acting hella sus about this, by the way. Mount Zalaho has some easy mandatory encounters to its puzzles, but otherwise it seems like a place we'll return to later. Back in Belkin, Spinoza and Jay tell us that lowering the outer lane should fix the miasma problem while the core can't vibe. There's a brief trip to Orshin Cave where Tyr tries and fails to convince Van to stop one last time. Van in return exposits he's going to end God and replace the world with clones as they aren't bound by the score. As much as I simplify, I do feel that Abyss has really good antagonists. I think this is because they have presence, conviction, and relationship. Easily the best antagonist in the series since Daos. Brazieri is also peak in this regard, and I have a soft spot for Innocence. Crap, I'm babbling. We stop by Ketterberg on the way to Mount Ronil for the next Sephiroth. Oh look, a Rorschach test in guise of a poorly aged joke. Guarding this Sephiroth is a trio of Legretta, Arietta, and Largo. Oh wow, a boss I lose to. Honestly though, just stock up on items, it'll help a lot. I can't recommend any order to defeat the trio, and sadly, Largo is hard to bait and will disrupt your mages like before, Legretta is mobile and has declared alarms, Arietta has negative gate and a screen nuke mystic art, so pick your poison. The Sephiroth itself doesn't have much to it, but feel free to loot what you can. If you're side questing, you have to come back eventually. The next and last dungeon of Act 2 is the Absorption Gate. It's probably one of the longest dungeons in the game. Halfway into the dungeon, the party gets split into 3 pairs. Unfortunately, the pair without any magic attackers has 2 mandatory fights against the same enemy. I considered trying the Reflect Add skill Natalia learned a while ago that I normally keep off, however it doesn't seem to work. I also considered Mystic Arts, however Natalia doesn't know any spells that could activate it or set up a FOF altered spell to activate it, so I have to do this fight somewhat normally. At the end of the Absorption Gate is Van Grant. He starts easy as his piercing art can be baited, however after a certain point Van just starts spamming magic, so good luck. After the fight, Van falls off almost as hard as Vesperia does after the opening ends. Lorelei tells Luke that Van's captured him, but Luke doesn't know ancient Hispanian, so we get a month-long time skip instead. I guess that's fine though. We still don't know who Natalia's dad is or why Anis was being sus back at Mount Salaho. Back home in Batical, we learn the planet storm is flaring up again and Van's sword was found outside of the Absorption Gate. Luke's mom tells him to touch grass despite his father's wishes, and we're off to get the party back together. Worth noting, the Cecile and Frink's questline is an auto-progress at this point. Kind of funny how the Cecile simp at the dock doesn't seem to notice she's right there. We pick up the improved Albior and Sheridan and learn where Ash might be. The Albior can now fast travel, which is going to speed things up tremendously. Tyr rejoins us in Yulia City. We pick up Anis and Guy and Doth and briefly revisit St. Bina and Sherry Hill. In Sherry Hill, we encounter Legretta, who reveals Arietta's animals saved the trio during Mount Ronil and absconds. Jay joins us on the return to St. Bina. We automatically go to Grand Kokma and oh no. Frings dies. Man, and Cecile was gonna get him dripped out and everything. There's the possibility Kimlaska ordered the military option that ended Frings, so we have to go check on Natalia. She confirms Kimlaska had nothing to do with it and rejoins the party. A bunch of side quests open up, most having no cutoff point and mini-grain and costumes such as the Ketterberg Spa. For brevity's sake, I will only be covering the Mushroom Road as an important one. Mushroom Road itself has no bosses, but it's one of the best grind spots in the game, and you can get an upgrade to the Albior that lets you land almost anywhere, such as Ketterberg. Returning from side questing, we end up in Doth to discuss starting a summit now that we're out of score to read. Tyr gets sick, the miasma's back, Iron got kidnapped again, Arietta saves us, and Anis is the imposter. The next dungeon is the main part of Mount Zalaho. We don't have Annis for the dungeon because she vented herself out of the party. The dungeon has environmental hazards, however they can't cause a game over, so feel free to ignore them. The boss is a fire dragon, rather threatening if they get near your mages, but otherwise the fight's an absolute breeze. At the beginning of Mount Zalaho, it's too late. Clone Pope has the same reaction to reading the score that I do watching the part of Loki's Echo review where he tries convincing the audience how unironically copy-pasting the homophobic part of Pulp Fiction into a furry vein is actually a good thing, and Big Pope escapes. At least Tyr is no longer sick and Annis unvents herself back into the party. Beating Mount Zalaho opens up even more side quests, none of which are missable. Namely an upgrade to the Sorcerer Ring, the last Albior upgrade, and most importantly Namco Banda Isle. Make sure to visit the Antlion Man in Caledonia before going to Namco. At Namco Banda, you can finish the Antlion Man quest, granting Annis her accessory. The Antlion Man doll passively regenerates Annis' HP and MP at a rate of 8% every 2 seconds. In practice, this means Annis can spam her strongest spells without needing gels. Annis can also get a fursuit at Namco, which makes your item sell for purchase price. With the fursuit and the Emperor's Best Friend title from the Katerburg Spa quest, you can do a trick in which you buy silverware weapons in Katerburg, then sell said silverware in Endgame for up to 300k gold in profit per run. Which is nice given a later side quest asks for a cool 1 mil in gold. Upgrading the Albior fully also grants you access to every search point, so feel free to farm them for nice stuff from Din's shop. Namely the capacity cores. Enjoy farming 160 or so phone stone fragments. The plot directs us to the Mount Ronil Sephiroth for Ash to yell at us, then to Batical where Big Pope becomes that bastard Mose, and to continue the Natalia's dad subplot. A trip to Caledonia, Sync is alive and Largo is the daddy. Yulia City for more discussing, and oh, a giant landmass is floating nearby. This is the Isle of Ferris. Take in the atmosphere. It's one of the longer dungeons and there are mandatory encounters, however your party isn't split and the only boss here requires beating the previous sword dancer fights. At the end of the dungeon we encounter the consequences of beating the first boss, who challenges Annis to a duel for later. Can't lie, I used to think this was like the bad part of Abyss. I know players certainly don't like witnessing Annis and Arietta's mutual toxicity, but on revisit, there are no bad parts of Abyss. The replica matter also continues and we witness Eldritch Rising. After Ferris, we return to Grand Kokman to discuss shutting off the planet storm for good, and that bastard Mose has a score-obsessed monologue to the world. Largo tells us Arietta will duel us at Cheagle Wood, so that's our next destination. Cheagle Wood's Arietta is very similar to Coral Castle Arietta, however we are much stronger so we reunite Arietta with her mom in due time. Yulia City, then Batical for discussing turning off the planet storm and how to deal with the replica issue. Luke and Ash argue who should commit Persona 3 to stop the miasma. Ash gets reunited with our parents and we're directed to the Tower of Rem to continue arguing Ash from committing Persona 3 Fez. Tower of Rem is intimidating, but it's a short dungeon. There's some required battling for a puzzle, however nothing crazy. At the end of the tower is a, hey, does this remind you of anything? I think I learned the word for it in psychology class. I think it's called a phonic, I mean yonic symbol. No? Well anyways, Distkaiser is still easy. After the fight is more Luke and Ash arguing over who should commit Persona 3 the answer. Then it's off to Doth for Luke to continue contemplating Persona 3 Portable. Then back to the tower to summon our Persona. Ash ends up helping Luke attempt Persona 3 Reload, however both end up surviving as Luke literally had the Jewel of Lorelei in him since the absorption gate. Things aren't all sunshine and rainbows however, as in Belkind, Luke gets told by a doctor that his cells are making like the Yosuke romance, and we get easily the most realistic depiction of existential dread and depression I've seen in media.
No, that's not it. I'm scared. If I tell everyone, they'll treat me differently. And every time they do, I'll be reminded that I'm going to die.
Luke, you're shaking.
See? I'm a coward. I'm already like this now. If the others knew, I'd never stop shaking and crying. I'd crawl into a little shell. So I figure, at least while I'm around them all, I can pretend it's going to be okay.
You idiot.
Yeah. No kidding. I really am. Sorry to worry you, Tyr.
After acquiring new drip for Guy, we had a battle so Natalia can learn for herself that Largo is her father, then to Yulia City for the summit on stopping the planet storm. After some scenes, we head to the absorption gate to shut off said planet storm. Thankfully, this retread goes fast, and at the end we encounter the remaining god generals a new drip, then fight Largo for good. Largo, much like Smo, is much easier by himself, so the fight ends as quickly as it started. Luke sees the planet's memory. That bastard Mose makes another Pope clone read the final score, entering typical apologist mode when it's a score of destruction. Then we take the Pope clone to Doth for them to adopt, with the Pope clone being named Florian. The next major location is the Radiation Gate, a very short dungeon where we fight that bastard Mose. He's a magic spamming boss, I'm a magic spamming player. Can it get any more obvious? After that bastard Mose turns into my PC were I to try and play Tales of Aselia 2 for an LGBT characters only challenge, we had a grand Kokma for the meeting on how to get into Eldrant. Ash challenges us to a duel for later, then off to Caledoni to prepare for the final dungeon plot-wise. The next and final dungeon, Eldrant. What can I say, it's actually pretty short, and there's just 4 bosses. The first is Ligretta, which goes as well as the first time we fought her. The second is a duel between Ash and Luke, so...
Shut up! This isn't about logic!
We cannot use magic, but it's a mandatory encounter so it doesn't count. Ash stays behind after losing so Luke and friends can move on. A bit later, Ash gets hit with a Dark Souls PvPer special. The third is Sink. He hates living, so naturally we give him the nice present of dying. With enough items, not even the typical disruption magic enemies cause will stave off their end. Make sure to get near the door to the final boss to trigger a conversation letting you know after is a point of no return. You can get drip for the fight from Peony, and you might as well to restock. The last fight with Van is nothing you haven't seen, but you definitely need to be stocked given Van has a rather powerful second mystic art, 2 health bars, and can spam magic. With Van defeated, Luke stays behind so the rest can escape Eldrant. The credits play. A 2-year time skip happens with a mysterious man who could be Luke, could be Ash, or could be a new guy with 4 balls. And the Tales of the Abyss spells only experience has concluded. So, closing thoughts. It's a fairly typical RPG challenge. The early game is the most threatening while your options are limited, and some bosses remind me Abyss still puts up a fight even under a playstyle where I can hinge on free run. Otherwise, I can understand seeing this as a normal Abyss playthrough. My love for Abyss still remains as strong as it was since I first played it in 2017. While I likely can't use much of it, I'm also reminded Abyss actually has a pretty good soundtrack, though I'm also a sucker for its use of bass. If I help spark any interest in the game, then great. As far as future content goes, well, admittedly I'm not a wellspring of ideas. Maybe I'll attempt Destiny PS1 spells only, Innocence DS Wisdom style locked, Raidou vs King Abaddon no demons, drag some people into Eternia hard mode, wait for Rebirth's translation to attempt Eugene only, or just do normal playthrough summaries. Well, with that said, goodbye, enjoy your day, whatever, peace.